Hi, this is an interview for Edularity. And speaking about history, do you know a little bit of the history of homeschooling?
I think I do.
Are you sure?
Of course, anybody who wants to pretend he's an historian is going to be a different angle on something, right?
Correct.
We all think there's one history, but we all know that it depends on your worldview, how you filter the facts and how you present the story. So I'm a little biased, like every other professor is biased. Okay, we want to get that out on the table for moms and dads and young people. Professors think they're unbiased. Don't believe them. Okay.
Right.
Here's the history. So we're going to do a 6,000-year history in what, 2 minutes?
Take the time.
Oh,
We have enough time.
Remember, depending on whether you think humans have been around for millions of years or whether you think they've been around for more like several millennia, Homo sapiens were always home educating their children.
Correct.
Children are born, mom and dad start teaching them things, like help them how to walk. They teach them the colors of the rocks and of the trees. They teach them how to tie their shoes. So home-based education has always existed with humans. Now, fast forward, and I'll become now a little bit U.S.-centric.
Okay.
We had obviously with Native Americans, they were home educating their children. And then we had Europeans come here to what we call the United States, and people were home educating their children. Time passed, and some other things developed, such as a dame school, so a lady maybe with a few families, and she's maybe a teacher. We had small one-room schoolhouses, but I think it's very important for United States citizens to remember, and people all over South America, Latin America to remember, in the United States, institutional public schooling as we know it today was not the norm until about 1900. That's not very long ago in history. And even when institutional, conventional classroom schooling became the norm for the majority of children, get this, it was only for a few months per year, for a few hours per day. So it's really, for me, fascinating to go back and look at that. I'm not an historian, but because I've been studying homeschooling so long, I had to go find out for myself, and that's what I found out. I looked at the statistics from the U.S. Department of Education. I looked at history books. It's really interesting. Then we move forward a little bit further. So now we're into the late 1800s, early 1900s. Home-based education numbers are dropping. Institutionalization is rising, both public government education and private education. And then we come to by the 1970s in the United States, what we now call homeschooling was almost extinct. Maybe 15,000 students is all. These are children who generally were in families where dad and mom were missionaries, like Christian missionaries, or Bassett's families, or I've met people like the little girl had a beautiful voice and maybe a radio station wanted her to sing for commercials, advertisements. So mom and dad would homeschool her and let her sing, and then they'd earn money for the family, things like that. And then you move into the late 60s and 70s, and then you have all kinds of things happening, percolating in history in the United States with interest in alternatives, in education, and other aspects of life. You have people like John Holt and Ivan Illich writing very strong critiques of institutional education. Other people too. By the late 70s, you have some Christians who are writing articles and books and saying, wait a minute, public education is not only not consistent with biblical thinking, it's antagonistic to Christian thinking. So you have people from both pedagogical perspectives and philosophical pedagogical perspectives all talking and writing these articles. And nobody knew what was going to happen. And from very different backgrounds, religiously, politically, philosophically, many people came to the conclusion it needs to be something other than institutional schooling. And they look back at history, and then many of them began talking about and promoting home education. Now that's the late 70s. In the early 80s and 80s, homeschooling started to grow in the United States, and a lot of people know today the growth has been tremendous. It's just huge. There are now probably at least 2.3 million school-age children in the United States being homeschooled. So that's the quick history.